to Down the Garden Path, everyone, and thank you for listening. I'm very excited to speak to a past guest and a very popular author, all about fruit trees. So Susan Poizner is joining me again today. Susan is an award-winning author, journalist, urban orchardist, and fruit tree care educator based in Toronto, Canada. She trains arborists, master gardeners, and community and home orchardists. That's such a title, isn't it, Susan? In fruit tree maintenance through personal workshops, online courses, and webinars. And I'm so happy to have you here. And you've got a new book and another one that a few books that we can talk about today. And welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's lovely to be here with you.
And you have a podcast as well. I should have mentioned that.
Yes, I have a podcast as well. It goes out once a month, we go into deep rabbit holes about fruit tree care, and it's called the Orchard People Podcast.
Excellent, excellent. And I know I recommend you like on Facebook groups and stuff when, and as you know, you've seen me, right? And many times somebody talks about fruit trees. I'm like, check out orchardpeople.com, because it is not just like planting a peony or planting a hydrangea. A fruit tree is a bit of a commitment, isn't it?
It definitely is. I like to think about planting a fruit tree as starting a long-term relationship, right? These trees, I remember when I started out, I really thought planting fruit trees was easy. You plant the tree, you water it till it establishes, and then you just wait for the harvest. And it is so much more than that. There's reasons for that, but it is an ongoing relationship. If you give that tree correct hands-on care, it will reward you with years and years of generous, beautiful, organic harvests. If you
Wonderful.
don't do the work that you need to do with fruit trees, it's not rocket science, it's not a ton of things, but you need to do
Mhm.
what you need to do. If you don't do those things, the tree will possibly, very likely, not be protective. It might be messy, it might get diseases, and it might be a challenge. And it might be something you go out in the garden and you look at and you think, oh no, I have to deal with this again.
Yeah.
So I guess my mission is, if possible, to help people have better relationships with their fruit trees. And if they haven't planted one yet and they're thinking of planting one, to help them start that journey in the best possible way so that they have an easy and really good relationship with their tree, and it's healthy and productive.
Excellent. Yeah. So you want to set them up for success.
Absolutely.
Right. And which is, as a landscape designer, and I was mentioning before the show how I am seeing more. When I first started designing about 20 years ago, people were buying homes that had a fruit tree and they were telling me to remove it. And now I'm designing gardens and they're asking me to put them in. But I kind of have to quiz them, right, as to the commitment. So, and I do recommend your website for them as well. So let's talk about your latest book is Fruit Tree Pruning.
Yes, fruit tree pruning, the science and art of cultivating healthy fruit trees.
Excellent. And healthy is the key thing, right?
Yes, exactly, because it's very easy to cultivate an unhealthy fruit tree. That
Yeah,
anybody can do,
yeah,
right?
exactly. We can just plant it and leave it, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
that is good. Um, where does it start? Like, I'm guessing, and I know we've had shows where we've talked about buying them, rootstock from, quality locations and really making sure you're buying the right tree for the right spot, right? Is that kind of where it starts?
That's where it starts. It starts with, before pruning comes into it, it's researching your tree. What people tend to do is they go to the garden center and they think, oh, I like Honeycrisp apple trees. I'll buy a Honeycrisp apple tree. That's the wrong way to do it, because these fruits that we are familiar with from the supermarket are not always very easy to grow. They're kind of designed to be grown on a large scale with pesticides and fungicides and toxic sprays. And we don't want to do that in our gardens. So, your priority as a new grower is to spend some time researching the types of trees that will be easier to grow. And there's a few steps you need to go through. So you want to find a disease resistant tree, one that doesn't get those common diseases, so you don't need to spray it with a fungicide. You need to make sure that the tree can pollinate properly. Some trees need pollination partners, like apple trees. You can plant one in the garden and it'll be beautiful, but if there's no other apple trees nearby, you won't get fruit. It will never successfully pollinate. So there's a few questions you need to go through. And I talk about that in my book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast, my other book, Growing Urban Orchards. I've got a couple of books that help you with that. But you want to research your tree and then order it from a specialist fruit tree nursery. There are
Mhm.
many of them across North America. And so look up, specialist fruit tree nursery near me. Then you're going to get such a beautiful wide choice of trees that will exactly serve your purposes. You will get delicious fruit. You will have a beautiful tree, but they'll just be easier to grow and better quality.
Because I think they can be, especially in the spring, fruit trees can be a bit of an impulse purchase, right? Because,
Oh,
like it's you walk by or you're in a nursery to pick up your tomatoes and you're like, "What's this? I want one of these." Like cherry trees especially, right? Um, so it is important to resist, isn't it? It's
it
important to
is.
resist that.
Oh, it is so important to resist because I love that you said that because it links in with fruit tree pruning. What the nurseries do is they get in slightly older trees. Sometimes, Joanne, they even have trees that have fruit hanging on it. Now, let's step back and think about that. You want a tree that will adapt well to your situation. So it's like adopting an older child, maybe, that already has their quirks. You're not getting to know it from a baby. I'm not saying it's not good to do, it's a beautiful thing to do. But when it comes to fruit trees, if you start with a younger tree that almost looks like nothing, like a stick in the ground, then you can shape it with pruning into the ideal fruit bearing structure that can hold a heavy harvest. When you buy one from the garden center, it's got very firm limbs. So if you are pruning it, you're, wounding it a little bit more.
Mhm.
It's not going to be ideally designed for fruit production. And all the energy that has gone into producing pretty fruit to hang off this potted tree is energy that should have gone into the root system, establishing that tree in your site. So, do you want instant gratification to plant a tree so that you can harvest 2 apples at the end of the first season that will then conk out because it doesn't have a strongly established root system? Or do you want a little tree that you can nurture and love and care for 2 to 3 years? And then it will give you a way bigger harvest for years and decades even to come.
Yeah.
So, short term,
Pain,
patience.
yeah, for long-term
Yeah,
gain,
right?
yes.
Long term
And
gain.
yeah, and that's the hardest thing, I think, in my reaction relationship with the clients and convincing them that, bare root, we've talked about it on the show before. I think people are afraid of bare root, thinking, but, and I've tried to explain like how quicker those roots establish versus, getting one from the
The
garden center because you never know it looks like it's well cared for at that moment you bought it, but you don't know what has happened in the last, year of that tree's life, right?
It's so funny. I interviewed somebody in my podcast that just went out a couple of days ago, and he's so funny. This is Josh. So Josh was saying he actually goes to the garden center. Like, I'll never buy a fruit tree from the garden center. I only like bare root fruit trees because they grow so well and adapt so well. He likes bargains. He's got a big property, so he can experiment. But if he goes to a garden center, he literally will take the tree and carefully take it out of the pot to look at the roots. And if those roots are circling around and around, this is not a good tree to buy. Those roots have been trying to push out of that pot forever. It's already stressed. And if you put it in the ground with those circling roots, it will just girdle itself. The roots will continue growing in a circle. And
Mhm,
this poor tree will not thrive in the long term. So
mhm.
we're really thinking about a relationship. This is a relationship that will last years, decades. This will be a legacy for your children, even your grandchildren,
Mm,
if you do it right.
yeah.
and don't shoot from the hip and impulse buy and grab the biggest looking tree that you can find at the garden center. In fact, you want the smallest tree, the
Mhm.
very smallest baby that
Yes.
will be your baby.
Yes. And to be honest, this is best practice to just open it up beyond fruit trees. That's best practice for tropical plants, tropical trees, like indoor fruit trees, Japanese maples. I think people want that big, beautiful, but like you said, you need to look at the roots, you need to see how it's growing. We'll get people that'll say, I put my Japanese maple in like 3 or 4 years and it hasn't done anything. Well, red flag, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, like, so aside from like, did you take it out of the pot? That. So I think I to get this across to anyone listening to a garden podcast, that same thing applies to many things, that you will be more successful the younger you buy, and maybe it's or just paying attention to knowing what you have, right? If they just take it out of the pot, dig a hole and plunk it in and they haven't even really looked at it, it's not all about what you see above ground. It really matters below ground for many things,
Exactly.
especially
Exactly.
the other two scenarios are, something pretty to look at, like in the sense of a Japanese maple or, an indoor fig tree, for instance, like fiddly fig. But a fruit tree, you actually want it to produce something too. So
Yeah,
even more so, right?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So once you've gotten now nurseries, the bare root nurseries, the specialized nurseries, they will only ship in the spring, right? Like, could we order or
You can order either well, you order as soon as you know what you want, because
okay,
sometimes you have to wait up to 6 months to get certain types of trees, because first of all, they only ship them out twice a year, either in the early spring or in the late fall,
okay,
always when the tree is dormant, no leaves, no flowers, no fruit. It is absolutely dormant, because that's the only way you can have a tree with its roots exposed. I mean, it's wrapped up in mulch and moist mulch,
yes,
but so there's twice a year they ship them out. But for instance, if you want to do your research now, or even you could order in October to get it the following spring. It's just there are certain cultivars that are popular, that are easy to grow, delicious varieties, and there's limited numbers of them. So, it's good to think in advance and plan in advance what you want to do.
okay. Is it important to choose a nursery? Like, we're in Ontario, right? We're in the GTA. Is it important to choose a nursery that is locally, or is it okay if we're choosing a nursery that may be in British Columbia?
Yeah, really good question. The truth is that you can, if you're looking for something special, like a particular apple tree, in our local nurseries, we've got some great ones in Ontario, Silver Creek Nursery, Whiffle Tree Nursery. We've got loads of ones, like loads of great nurseries, Hardy Fruit Tree Nursery in Quebec. So you can order from further afield, if you are looking for something specific. Saying that, if I was to order a tree from Victoria in British Columbia, their climate is different than ours. They may carry different trees that I can't grow. If you know how to research the correct tree, you can get your tree from anywhere. You'll just check that it's the right plant hardiness zone and the right cultivar. You'll have done your research and you know what to do.
Okay. Now, okay, that's very helpful. Locating it, and this is something that may help me do better designs too, is can you put one anywhere in a yard, or are there some things? I'm assuming you want a specific, well, one, I think you should see it from a window. Those are things that I think about, right? Um, but because they are beautiful when they're flowering and beautiful as they grow. So yeah, so do you recommend, siting them on a property?
So definitely, first of all, most fruit trees, apple trees, cherry trees, apricots, plums, all of those trees, pears, Asian pears, they all need full sun. They
Okay.
need a full sun site.
Full sun.
And the temptation that I'm sure you've seen a
Mhm.
lot and everybody would do would be to put it in a back corner so it doesn't shade your whole garden, or a side corner beside the fence with the neighbors. The downside, the downside is that you need access to the roots all around the tree. So here's what happens. Fruit trees have roots. Roots are so important to anchor the tree into the ground, and people know that. But they're also important in taking in moisture and nutrition. So if you put your fruit tree right up against a fence, then you can water the roots on your side of the tree, and you can mulch the roots on your side of it. You can feed those roots, you can nourish those roots and irrigate, but you can't necessarily take care of the roots on the other side.
Mhm.
And if they wither away, then your tree will suffer. It is a being. It's like, only feeding your child on Mondays and Tuesdays,
Yeah.
right? Like you wouldn't do that.
Yes.
So that's another thing to consider, that that tree needs space. And I talk about in my online courses, you want to leave room for the roots to grow. You don't want to be planting hostas under them, right? Those
Mm.
you don't want to be planting strawberries under them. People
Okay.
talk about food forests and layering and all that wonderful stuff of permaculture. And I love so many of the concepts, but there are places where people fumble. And it's you have a young tree and you say, hey, I'm going to plant some strawberries and this and shrubs around it that actually compete with your young tree
Mm.
for water and nutrients. And young fruit trees do not compete well. Plus, let's say it's even an older tree and you think, hey, I'm going to plant strawberries. It's an older tree, the roots are established. I'm going to plant strawberries all around the root system because, the tree's okay now. Even if the tree doesn't mind competing with the strawberries for water and nutrients, it means that you need to step all over those strawberries in order to harvest your tree, use organic or holistic sprays, and prune your tree. So basically, you're trampling all over everything.
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb is know how big the tree is going to be when it's mature, how wide the canopy is going to be. And if you want to put a shrub beside it, definitely do so. But make sure it's outside the edge of the canopy when that tree is going to be mature. Just know
Okay.
how big it'll get.
Okay. Yeah. Because I can see that as they mature, often people will say, well, the grass isn't growing underneath the tree, so I might as well put plants, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's a make work project now, like.
But then you start to think differently. And part of the make work of a fruit tree is you need to nourish it every year. So
Mm.
what we do is we don't use this and bottles of that from the garden center. Those fertilizers are designed with certain NPK values, nitrogen, phosphorus,
Mhm.
potassium, um, and they are theoretically what fruit trees need, except for whoever designed those products does not know what nutrients we have in our soil.
Mm.
Everybody's soil is different. So you're
Mhm.
just throwing nutrients at a tree that it may not need, that may be bad for the tree. So how I suggest people feed their tree is have a mulch circle. And the
Okay.
mulch circle needs to go out to the edge of the canopy, which means that when the tree is young, it's a
Okay.
little circle. It's a little
Okay.
donut sort of shape of, let's say, compost that you put around the roots of the tree in the early spring. You do it in the early spring while the tree is dormant because the tree will now, in the early spring, it's using energy that it's stored away over the winter in its root system. So it's using that energy to open its buds and to open blossoms and make fruit. But once that energy is gone, before the leaves have properly formed, it needs more nourishment. By that time, the mulch, the compost you've laid around its roots, will have started to break down and will nourish the tree. So you put this beautiful little donut of mulch or compost around the tree. As the tree gets older, that ring needs to be bigger and bigger
Okay.
because the feeder roots of the tree are on the outer edge of the canopy. So when you are picturing the design for this garden, leave space for the tree. If it's a dwarf tree, the canopy won't be huge.
Mhm.
A dwarf tree can maybe be 10 feet tall, so maybe the canopy is going to be in total 10 feet from side to side. But if it's a semi-dwarf tree that's going to be 18 feet tall, this is the rootstock we're talking about. Trees come in different sizes depending on
Mhm.
the rootstocks chosen. Then you're going to need a bigger mulch circle. So keep that in mind and make that part of the design every year when we mulch our trees in the Ben Nobleman Park Community Orchard. It's a beautiful, it's not a huge park, but it's, a big enough space, but the trees look great. They look
Oh,
so
wonderful.
happy.
Oh,
They are
good.
surrounded with a gorgeous circle of mulch. They are so happy. Something you can try, which I haven't tried yet, is once the tree is pretty much full size, and with pruning, once you've decided what size you want your tree, you can keep it that size to an extent, to an
Okay.
extent. But if you really want to fancy it up, on the outer edge of the canopy, you could put some tightly, I don't know how you feel about design wise, but like daffodil bulbs, lots of them in the outer circle, right at the edge where the grass is going to begin.
Okay.
There is a permaculture concept suggesting that it will prevent the grass from growing into your circle. Okay,
Oh,
so in the spring, the first thing you see is the daffodils blossoming, looks gorgeous, and then they're going to die back, and it may not look so gorgeous as the leaves kind of flop over.
yeah.
That is an approach. I haven't tried it. I would love to experiment. The problem is, and we do have a lot of mature trees, but if you do it too early on, then it's weird. You need to make sure your mulch goes to the outer edge of the canopy. So basically, a fruit tree, if it's a semi-dwarf or a full-size tree, it's a commitment of space. You're committing the space. If it's a dwarfing tree, there's lots of ways you can grow them so
Hmm.
that they don't take up as much footage in terms of the mulch circle.
Okay.
You can do espalier
Hmm.
plantings. You can do fruiting walls. That's a little different, and those would use dwarfing rootstocks.
Okay. Now the show isn't about mulch, but I want to emphasize that all mulches are not created equal. So
No.
we are not talking the shredded stuff in a bag from a hardware store, big box store, which for many cases is shredded pallets, dyed, and that type of thing. We are talking a nutritious,
Yeah.
I love composted pine that I get in bulk. What is your opinion on like mulch? Because that's a place where people can definitely go wrong, right?
Yeah. So if they're DIY people and they're making their own compost, that's the best, right?
Yes.
In our park, we kind of do it, but we don't do it. We bring in composted manure. It doesn't smell, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You can buy it in the garden center in bags if you need to. We bring in like 4 cubic yards to, we've got like, I don't know, 18 trees or something or whatever we've got. So that's what we do because we know there's nutrition. You can try one year doing sort of cow manure that's composted, another time chicken manure, might have different nutrient
Mushroom compost.
mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to put wood chips on top of it, you know, you can do so, and some of these places will give you, wood chips that are not dyed, and that's good. The best thing is possibly arborist wood chips, which is got a whole bunch of nutrition in it as well as the chips. I learned recently from a podcast interview that I did on my show that the wood chips you get often in the garden centers is actually bark chips. It's from the timber industry. They're just chipping the bark. It's called beauty bark. So it looks very pretty, but it breaks down all at the same time because it's from the same part of the tree. Whereas if you get arborist wood chips, there's going to be skinny branches in there that actually have living tissue underneath. There's going to
Hmm.
be leaves in there. There'll even be some organisms in there, like beneficial insects or, little
Hmm.
organic matter. It might be dead,
Yeah.
it might be alive, who knows? Um, but so you can put, let's say you do 2 inches of compost, and on top of that, if you want to deter weeds, you can put 2 inches of wood chips on top of that. And
Okay.
it looks super pretty.
Excellent. Yeah. So that is good to know. So I think that goes with the commitment. So I want everybody to understand like these are important steps for you to be successful. It seems, plant a tree, put mulch, it's not though. It's really making sure you're doing the right, because I'd hate for people to do the right things of like the research, the purchasing the right tree, locating it in the right spot, and then go to a big box store and so it's all kind of right, like it's all
Yeah.
the sequence is so important and will save you so much down the road. So it might seem like a bit like we're being a little bit particular, but we want you to, again, setting you up for success. We want fruit trees. Well, I want everybody to plant a tree that'd be successful, but fruit trees because you want the fruit, right?
Well, and think about it. I mean, I've never had children, so I'm no big expert, but I'm assuming you get pregnant or you're adopting a kid or something, you kind of do some research first. Okay, I need, I don't know, a stroller,
Yeah.
whatever. I need a baby bottle.
Car seat.
There's a few
Yeah.
things I need. And then
Yeah.
you maybe look at a book, How to Be a Mom, and
Yeah.
it says, oh, you need to feed the kid like 3 times a day. Wow, I didn't know that. Ooh. So this tree, you're going to have a relationship with this tree.
Yeah.
This will be the tree that you have in the garden that you're feeding your family with. And when your kids grow up and get married, they might say, hey, I'd love to get my wedding pictures done under the old
Mhm,
apple tree that you planted when I was little. Can we do that?
mhm.
This tree will be part of your family. Treat it like that. Just it's not rocket science. There's not tons to do, but it's some skills you have to learn.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful, and that's what we're here for, to talk about, and your books are for. So I do want to talk about pruning, but before we get to that, I do when when does pruning come in? So when you've bought a bare root stock, let's say you planted it this spring, you've got your circle, the compost. Um, when would you need to start pruning? And two, when could you expect fruit? Like, 2 questions
Right.
there.
Okay, so the first question is so important. If you're buying that tree from the garden center that's already big, you plant it, the poor thing, it's been in a pot. You don't prune it right away. That you actually start the next year. You leave it
Okay.
in the ground 1 year because it's got to adjust. It's going to be in shock, transplant shock. If you are ordering a young tree, it's called usually a whip, a 1-year-old tree, bare root tree from a specialist fruit tree nursery. They'll send it to you in probably in the early spring. And you plant this bare root tree. So its roots are not in a pot. They've been wrapped in mulch. You've got to plant it pretty soon, like right away if possible.
Mhm.
You tuck it into the ground, you water it, you plant it correctly. You make your very first pruning cut, Joanne, on the day you plant your tree.
Really?
Yeah. So, for instance, this past couple of weeks ago, we got a new tree from a fruit tree nursery. It's a replacement tree for one of the trees in the park that died. And it's a peach tree. So it had a stem and it had it had 5 branches,
Okay.
something like that. It was relatively big. You look at it and you think, this is a nice little tree. This is a good tree. By the time we were finished with pruning it, we popped it in the ground, tucked it in. What we had left was one stem with 5 tiny little branches coming out of it. And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm going to take it back and simplify it
Sure.
even more. If you get the most simple, a whip, which is one branch, looks like a branch with roots on it. It's grafted together. The rootstock, it provides the roots. The branch is the fruiting wood, which will one day be the trunk. You pop it in the ground, you plant it, you cut off the top third of the tree. Okay, the reason for that is those roots have a limited amount of energy in them.
Okay.
They,
Oh. Mhm.
when they dug it up out from the nursery, they would have loved, some of the roots will still be in the ground. They maybe didn't get all the roots. It's a young tree, so it doesn't have tons of roots yet. So you're saying to that tree, okay, sweetie, you don't have to support, let's say there's, 20 buds on this one branch. You don't have to support 20 buds. I'm going to cut you down so you only have to support 15 or 12 buds so that each bud on that little branch can grow a longer, stronger branch,
Mhm.
right? You're
Okay.
not making it push out everything. And you usually make that cut about 36 inches off the ground, which is where 32 to 36 inches off the ground, quite short, because that's where you want the first branches to form.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
there's in my book, Fruit Tree Pruning, The Science and Art of Cultivating Healthy Fruit Trees, I teach you the science, but I also teach you two different ways to structure a tree, especially when you're planting a young tree like that. If you're doing a central leader tree, it's going to be like a Christmas tree shape. One central stem, the lower branches are wider, and the upper branches are more narrow, so that the sun reaches every single branch on the tree, the fruit can ripen properly. There's so many different benefits of that structure.
Okay.
The other structure is a vase-shaped tree that looks like a goblet or a cup. No central stem, but a nice open cup.
Like multi-stem. Yeah.
So let's say 5 main branches. Each
Okay.
branch will subdivide, but it's a cup shape. Looks like a goblet. The goblet part is the trunk, and then boom, you got 5 branches. Either way, you have your lowest branches at, let's say, knee height, right? You don't want branches lower than knee height because the once they've got fruit on them, they'll sag to the ground. It's not going to have good air circulation and stuff like that. So that was the complicated answer to your simple question, which is when do
Do
you
you
first
first
plant
prune? Mhm.
when do you
Yeah.
first prune your fruit tree? And if it's a bare root tree, you will first prune your fruit tree on the very day you plant that bare root tree. And I'll also say to you, the first 3 years that tree is in the ground is the most important years. It's called formative pruning and the most fun years for pruning because
Okay.
that's when you are sculpting your tree. You are creating the shape that will last a lifetime.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so you do need to pay attention. It's not plant and forget it,
Yeah.
right? And
And
wait
that's
five
what
years.
happens when
Yeah.
I teach in person. I say, okay, guys, as I'm teaching a room full of people, and I say, when do you think is the first time you plant your tree? You prune your tree. Would you say it's after 2 years in the ground, after 5 years in the ground, when it needs it? A lot of people say, oh, I'd wait till it when it needs it because I don't want to damage the tree. And then I tell them, well, actually, it's the first year, the very year you plant your tree. And then when I tell them, guys, when you prune your tree, you're actually going to be removing perfectly healthy branches. Then they're like, why would I do that?
Hmm.
And it's because on their own, a fruit tree will give you a big tangle of branches in random areas. So you get this tangle of branches, and pathogens love dark, damp canopies.
Ah,
So fungal diseases love it. They love dark, damp canopies that never dry out. So you'll get fungal diseases. Fruit needs sunshine to ripen. Sun ripened fruit. Everybody wants sun ripened fruit. If you've got this messy canopy with a million branches and the fruit is in there somewhere, but the sun can't get to it, you're not going to have tasty fruit. And I'll just throw in another reason as well. If the tree is supporting with its limited amount of energy a million branches, or lots of branches, lots of leaves, lots of shoots, lots of fruit, each part of that equation will only get a small bit of the. So the fruit itself may be small, may be hard. By thinning out the branches, removing some, leaving others, using these strategies, the fruit will get a larger share of that sweet, delicious energy that the tree is
okay.
nourishing itself with. And you
Excellent.
get sweet, delicious fruit as a result.
And I could see where people would think the more branches, the more fruit, but that's not the
Yeah.
case.
No, the more branches, the more fruit, the more crappy fruit,
Yeah.
right? If you want lots of crappy fruit, totally don't prune your tree. You'll get less fruit by pruning your tree, but better quality. And actually, you're saving yourself some time because with a fruit tree, you need to thin the fruit anyways. Fruit trees put out a lot more fruit than they can support for a quality harvest. So often we go out there when the fruit has started to form, and let's say you've got an apricot tree and it is loaded with young little apricots along the branch. And I remember looking at that and thinking, if all those apricots grow to full size, what's going to happen? Because they're already packed on the branch. That explains why we thin. We look at the branch, We say, how big is the apricot going to be when it's full size? And we strategically remove baby fruits so that the remaining ones can grow to full size.
Wow, that makes sense. I never thought of that, but it definitely makes sense. And I think of driving in the country and seeing like a young orchard, and that is very much the case, right? They're loaded like, yeah, they're not a big trees.
No,
Oh, goodness gracious. So yeah, this is great information. And I actually have a like a case study we can just chat about quickly. I was visiting a client this morning before we got on the call, and they have a mature pear tree. So I calculate it's 32 years old. The pear tree was in this yard before they bought the house in 1993. The husband has pruned it very hard, every year, the wife had said. And uh, and she said it does produce fruit, but very hard. They've never really been able, like in all the 32 years they've lived there. And I was shocked. So you could tell he's pruned it because it is the branches are not 3 feet off the ground though. It's high. It starts high. So they did inherit it. So they didn't plant it. But she just unfortunately has lost her husband, and it was his tree that he looked after, and she's not sure what to do. And so yeah, so you must see that. You get, I know you do a lot with initial plantings, but you also help people with the mature, right?
absolutely. Even in my book, Fruit Tree Pruning. So it starts off with the science, how pruning works, what the science is, because once you intuitively understand it, you can look at any tree and you can figure out what you need to do. But what I like to say to people who have older trees is air circulation is the most important. Remember, we were talking about we don't want
Yeah.
fungal diseases. We need an open canopy that sunlight can penetrate and dry the canopy and ripen the fruit, and a nice open tree where the wind can blow through, and so that any pathogens or fungal spores will just blow right away, right? So if you stand under your big pear tree and look up, which part of the canopy is most congested?
Okay.
Where are where's the tangle of branches? And you could spend hours, cutting this little branch out and that little branch out. Often, though, you look and you can see one, what we call a scaffold branch, and that's the branch, the main branches coming out of the trunk. It'll have a lot of sub branches attached to it. They're called lateral branches. You may find one or two scaffold branches that, if you correctly prune out safely, not leaving a stub, not cutting too close to the trunk. You're cutting right past the collar, which is this area in the tree that allows the tree to heal. Let's say you take out one of those large branches and somewhere in the middle of the tree, and all the lateral branches that are attached to it come out, and boom, you've opened up a whole bunch of light and air into the tree. The limitation is with an older tree, you can only remove 20 to 25% of the living canopy each
Mm,
year.
yeah.
So that means this year you make one big cut like that, if that's the structure of the tree, and if that's what you
Mm,
know, open up some air circulation. And maybe the following year, look at another part of the tree. Where is it congested? In 4 years, you will have revitalized this tree. You will see all of a sudden it's not producing hard, terrible quality fruit. It's actually producing nice fruit because it's got extra energy. Now, here's the other thing. When you are pruning an older tree like that, it is wise to do so after blossom time and
okay.
not in
So
the winter.
so now,
Yeah,
if it's right? Okay.
not during blossom time. During blossom time, especially with apple and pear trees, there is a bacterial disease called fire blight that spreads. So to avoid that, wait till the blossoms, the petals have fallen. Maybe you see little fruitlets have formed. Now it's time to prune it. Here's why. Because when you prune during the summer, the tree does not respond with vigorous growth. Earlier on, I think I told you that with the whip, it's dormant, it's a dormant pruning. So the tree is using the energy in its root system. And if it's got, let's say, 10 units of energy in the root system, 10 buds, each bud gets 1/10 of the energy. If it has fewer buds, each bud gets more energy. In the summer, all the energy in the roots is gone. and it's producing energy in its leaves.
Mm.
And the hormones have changed as well. So its instinct after blossom time is not, oh, let's make even more branches. Its instinct is, oh, let's put some energy into my fruiting buds for next year. So the hormones have shifted. And no longer will pruning in the summer, the early summer, encourage lots of branching. Instead, it will encourage the tree to invest in the branches it has to create fruiting buds that are really great, that make lots of fruit.
Okay. Um, And I think so when I say this was pruned, I mean, there is a difference. There's trimming, and this goes with
Yes,
other trees and shrubs as well, that try to explain to clients. So there's trimming and there's pruning. And they, just like mulch, they are not the same thing, right? And so when I look back at these pictures and I look at what, of the, I almost want to put it up on the screen. I think he's been trimming it really hard, but I don't
exactly.
know that he's been pruning it.
Okay, so what you don't want to do with a fruit tree is turn it into a lollipop and just say, oh, okay, I want to trim around it. Here's the problem, and again, it depends on what time of year you do it. Every time you shorten a branch, you're encouraging the buds inside on that branch to produce more sprouts. There's science in it, and I write about my book. So it's like a sparkler effect. You make one cut, and then you get 10 little branchlets forming from that one cut. And so all of a sudden, the canopy is going to get more and more dense, doing the exact opposite of what you want to do.
Mm,
If instead of shaping the tree, you remove strategically right to the trunk some of those main branches, that doesn't have that sparkler effect. You just are channeling the energy from the tree into other branches, or to strengthening the branches. So it's a very different thing. So part of the problem could be with your client that her husband shaped the tree every year into a pretty lollipop shape or whatever shape he did, that would make it more and more dense.
right. Right. Okay.
Now, I'm not saying you never shorten a branch with correct fruit tree pruning. You do. There's lots of reasons for it. But when you know the difference between how the tree responds from a thinning out cut, which is a removing an entire branch back to its origin, and a heading back cut, which is shortening a branch, they're totally different effects, and you can decide what you want and use the appropriate cut.
Okay.
All of pruning for fruit trees is pretty much two cuts, either shortening or removing the branch. Once you know what each of those cuts are for, you can just go for it and you can predict what's going to happen next.
Okay. And that is probably the case for many people that may be purchasing a house that came with like they did, right? Purchasing a house with came with an existing tree, or you've already planted a tree, years ago, and you're not, you think that all the animals get all the fruit and you never get any, right? So it's never too late. Is it ever too late to kind of
Never,
regenerate? Never.
never
Okay,
too
it's
late.
never. Okay.
No, it's never too late to regenerate. However, one thing is important to recognize where when a branch is diseased and to remove
Mm,
that and, care for it properly, dispose of it properly. So sometimes a tree is at the end of its journey. And
mhm.
it's very sad when it happens, but sometimes you do have to remove a tree when it's diseased. But just because it's old, that's not a reason.
That's not
These
a
old
reason.
trees that have been neglected can be brought back to productivity and they can continue to produce a harvest, continue to be beautiful. And they just need the TLC that you're going to offer them as a new pruner.
Excellent. Is it a DIY? Like, are we giving too much expectation? Like, is it a
It's
DIY or is
It
it
is
something?
absolutely a
Yeah, oh,
DIY,
yeah,
Joanne. It is
good.
absolutely, if I can do it, everybody can do it.
Susan.
Honestly, it took me 3 years of going to classes to figure out what do I need to do here. 3 years until I finally figured out, oh, it's 5 steps. All I have to do is these 5 steps. That's for a younger tree. But once you, like, Joanne, when you read my book,
Okay.
you're going to know what to do. You'll be like,
Yes.
okay, you might want to take a picture and share it with me and say, Susan, what do you think about this cut or what do you think about that cut until you build confidence? But Anyone can do this. And in fact, arborists are not trained in fruit tree care.
That's my
So
next question. Yes. Yeah,
you could call
call.
up your local arborist and say, help me with my tree. They may turn it into a lollipop. They may do God knows what. They may top it. They may just take off the top of the tree. All of this to disastrous results.
Mm.
I have arborists who take my online courses because they're not trained. This is farming more than arboriculture. This is horticulture. It is a
Ah,
different thing. So I would say, even if you have a huge tree and you are bringing in an arborist, read my book first or learn fruit tree pruning first, and you tell them what to do
okay.
because they're not going to know. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Um, is it, the caller, like, so pruning is, there is an art to it though. And so I'm assuming your book has pictures and diagrams
yes,
on how to
yes,
make the right cuts, making sure your tools are clean and,
yes. And
uh,
even what tools you need to have. What are the best
okay.
tools? So, for instance, for years, when your tree is older, you do need a handsaw.
Mm, yep.
And mostly I work with pole pruners, which are long pruners, and I can pull, even high up in the canopy. I don't have to climb a ladder or anything. Sometimes you want to remove a thick branch, and I had cheap hand saws from here, there, and everywhere, even a Lee Valley one, and which is not cheap. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, such upper body work. Maybe I need somebody else. Maybe I should have my husband to do it. Then I go and invest in a Silky handsaw, a Silky brand,
Ooh,
which is
silky.
a Japanese handsaw. And oh my gosh, it goes through like butter. You need to use hardly any muscle. And in fact, to
Really?
correctly use a handsaw, you shouldn't be pressing down anyways. You let the tool do the work. You're just pulling and pushing forward. I think the difference with Japanese saws like Silky, it's a pull saw rather than a push saw. So it's when you do the pull stroke, when you're pulling it towards you, it cuts and then you push it forward and no pressure necessary because it's not doing anything. But I have a whole chapter on what are the right tools, what are my favorite
Great.
brands, and how to care for your tools. Keeping them sharp is really easy and it's very important. With the handsaw,
Excellent.
you can't sharpen it yourself, but with all your other pruning tools, your loppers and your hand pruners, you definitely can. And of course, yes, you sterilize your tools before
Sterilized.
using them on a
Okay.
tree. Yeah.
Wonderful. This is such great information. And it makes me, I wish I had space for one, to be honest, fruit trees. But I am excited to see that people are interested in it again, because I think they are memorable trees. And it does pay to have to know that you're going to get a harvest. And pruning, like you talked about pruning and pruning the right way to avoid pathogens and things like that, and feeding the tree. So are we just feeding it, in the compost every year? Do we
Yeah.
need to put a liquid feed fertilizer down? Do we need to, okay, no foliar,
Great
like
questions. Well,
foliar
it's a little
sprays and
nuanced.
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little nuanced. If possible, anybody who has a fruit tree or is thinking of planting one, if possible, do a soil test with a lab. Take some soil samples, send them to a lab. One test is going to be enough, right?
Okay.
You just need to know that your soil is somewhat balanced, right? If you find out the pH of your soil is totally off and that fruit trees will not thrive in that pH, then you're not going to plant a fruit tree. So, if possible, before you plant or even after, send it to the lab and they tell you how to take the sample and then ask for recommendations. If it's out of balance, say, I would like recommendations,
Hmm,
please. And this is for a backyard garden, so do it per 100 square feet or something like that. If your garden uh, needs it, if you can amend at that time with any amendments that they suggest. After
okay.
that, you should be able to feed you mostly with the compost in the early spring. Saying that, with your kid, do you sometimes want to give them something special? Or, I'm thinking about like birthday cake, but it's actually not birthday cake because birthday cake maybe isn't so good for you. Maybe it's a beet smoothie or whatever,
Yeah.
but there are
Vitamins.
vitamins, right?
Yeah.
Yes, vitamins, better comparison. So there on my website, orchardpeople.com, I have an article, homemade fruit tree sprays. So you go to orchardpeople.com, in the search box, put homemade or something like that.
Okay.
DIY homemade fruit tree sprays. What you can do if you love your tree is you can every 10 days or so have a sprayer, a pressure sprayer probably. I like backpack sprayers, even if you only have one or two trees, because once it's filled up with water, it's heavy.
Yeah.
But you put in rainwater if possible. If not, then put in regular water and put in like a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses. And there's a few other things you can add as well. If every 10 days during the growing season, even if you do it just once, you spray your tree with the blackstrap molasses mixture, which is very diluted, you will see within hours, and for sure within 24 hours, you'll see that the leaves get greener. So it's
Really?
actually, yes, it's almost instant. It's actually encouraging. It gives the tree the sugars and the minerals and the nutrition it needs to increase photosynthesis. And when it photosynthesizes more, a whole bunch of good things happen. It has more energy for itself, but when a tree photosynthesizes, it also deposits a certain share of the energy into the soil. It uses some of it and it just gives the rest of it to the soil, which attracts beneficial soil organisms. And if you do that regularly, then you get more and more organisms in the soil, beneficial organisms that will break down your compost, that will feed the soil, feed the tree, that will do everything. So by doing this every 10 days, you are actually feeding the soil through your tree, and the soil organisms will reciprocate by hanging around and feeding your tree.
Can we do that to all our trees? I feel like you two should be.
I think it's worth a try. I think it's
Yeah.
worth a try. The tree you would not do it to is if your tree is sick.
Mm,
Let's say it has leaf spots on it that are probably fungal. You got to be careful. Certainly not with molasses. Is it going to be feeding the pathogens instead of the tree?
right.
If you read the article carefully, there's other things like you may want to dilute yogurt. Um, that, if it's a sick tree, maybe diluted yogurt, just a spoon of yogurt in your big sprayer of a gallon of rainwater might give some beneficial microbes that will fight off the bad guys, just like eating yogurt in your body, having more good organisms and outnumbering the bad organisms. So you need to watch what you're doing and see what the response is.
Okay. Okay. So now here in Ontario, most of the chemicals that you use to spray, and we know that our commercially grown products are sprayed with, are not available to homeowners. But even if they were, we really don't want to do that because this is food, right? So is that really it? Like, is it really to healthy tree and healthy fruit? Is it really about the fertilizing and the proper pruning? And we don't, because I want to think of a dormant spray. Like when I
Yeah.
worked at a garden center, we would recommend that the dormant spray, at the certain little window to help with any overwintering insects in your fruit trees and other trees. Is that still a thing, or is that something you don't recommend?
That is an extra piece. And again, I'm a minimalist. I
Mm,
do as little of that stuff as possible. Um, if your tree is suffering from certain disease symptoms, there are organic sprays that you can turn to. But the one that I do recommend for everyone, your tree is healthy, you always need to do a dormant spray.
okay.
So we use lime, sulfur, and dormant oil. That is the one
Yes.
and only spray that I will, use on any tree. It is an important window. Once the buds have broken open or opened up, it's too late. So that in the early spring before bud break, that's the time I'm looking really carefully to
Hmm.
say it has to be on a day where the temperature is above freezing, but the buds have to still be closed. Just
Hmm.
read the packaging. We use lime,
Yes.
sulfur, and dormant oil, but there are other dormant sprays as well.
Yeah.
Other than that, the healthier your tree is, the more resistant it will be to pests and diseases. Pruning will help you with the disease part. Pests, not necessarily. So, in my various books, like Grow Fruit Trees Fast, does give you various approaches, effective approaches to protect your trees from pests. And the approach can be as simple as in the fall, clean up around your fruit tree meticulously. Remove every single leaf, especially diseased leaves with spots on them,
Okay.
every piece of fallen fruit, especially since it may have pests in it. Clean it up. Do not put it in your compost
Mm.
where they will just overwinter. Put them in the
Hmm.
bag, put them in either a city leaf collection or in the municipal garbage, whatever. Get them off the site. Just by, and also sometimes you see little mummy fruit hanging in the tree, little fruitlets that never quite grew properly. Sometimes they're fuzzy. Pick them off the tree.
Okay.
They may be a reason they didn't grow to full size, right? Just little sickly fruits, pick them off, get them off the site. So that is one of the many tips of easy things you can do so that you don't have to use those toxic sprays that not only make the fruit, you're covering the fruit with stuff that you don't want, but you're breathing in stuff you don't want to breathe in, and you're putting chemicals in the environment you don't want
Hmm.
to. I believe we can grow fruit trees naturally. I really do. And the dormant sprays, they are usually, well, it depends what kind of oil, like whether that you can certainly get organically accepted ones.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was new to me when working at the garden center, and I felt it is a safer thing. Like it is a more of a natural, like as opposed to a chemical. Like it is an
Yes.
oil.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Well, what
and
it
it.
does, it's so smart. What it does is it coats the trunk and the branches with oil that suffocates insects that are hiding inside. So with your dormant spray, you're going into all the nooks and crannies and wounds. You make sure you spray in there too. I used to think, oh, I don't want to hurt the tree. It has a wound there, so I won't spray there. No, that's exactly where you need to spray
Mm.
because that's where the pests have found to set up shop and make little homes.
Right. Excellent. So much information, and you make it sound so simple. Like I really feel like you take the overwhelm of it. And I love the idea is that your books are written not only for the new gardener who is buying a new bare root tree, but also for someone that may have inherited a tree in their yard, and wants to look, or their parents' yard. Like I think maybe you are living and your parents have never looked after those trees in the back 40, right, and you want to bring them back to life. To know that you can do that, I think is really great, isn't it, Susan?
It is. I think so. It's taken me a long time to learn the stuff that I learned, but it's like everything. I learn it. It's such a struggle. And it's like, I don't understand this. And then I have to understand the science because I don't understand it. Once I understand it, it's like, oh, light bulb happens. And it's like,
Yes.
boom. Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
So, I've created this course called Certificate in Fruit Tree Care, and it takes 8 hours for people to go through, but they love it. They all give me 5-star reviews and they're like, oh my God, that was so much. And it was like fun to watch and that was so great. And I kind of sometimes am surprised. I'm thinking, isn't that course all common sense? But when
Mm.
I created the course, I didn't know any of that stuff. It's
Yeah.
common sense to me now because I understand the science. So, I'm so glad that people can still enjoy it and learn from it. But I think at one point, Joanne, with more like people like us talking about it, at some point, maybe in 10 years or in 20 years, it's going to be common sense for everybody.
Mm.
Nobody's going to need an e-learning course because we tell our kids, or you know what I mean? We tell our neighbors, oh, this is why, and this is how, and everybody will know how to do it. It's
Right.
sort of a change in consciousness around
Yes.
fruit trees.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to ask, where did this start for you, this passion? Like, did you have a tree in your own yard? Like, where?
It started because Cliff, my husband Cliff, who you've met,
Yes.
who's so amazing. And when I met him, he just introduced me to gardening in general.
Ah.
And I didn't want to go there, but he persevered and he's like, come on, let's have a garden. From there, I just became fascinated and I realized that my love was trees. And then it's very soon I realized like fruit trees rock. Like I love fresh food. And you can have a veggie garden and you plant it every year and whatever, but you have to replant your zucchini plant every year, plant your carrots every year. A fruit tree, Joanne, you plant it once and it will feed you for generations to come.
Oh gosh.
It is the
Yeah.
most generous thing in the world. Why wouldn't you want a fruit tree
Yeah.
as your best friend,
Yes.
right?
And then to have edible fruit. I know my husband, I said I put apples on the groceries on the list, right? He came home with like 5 apples and he goes, "Now those apples were $3 each, so you better enjoy them."
Yes,
And
exactly.
I didn't even know he paid attention to the cost of the apples. But yeah, I think that is another reason why the cost of food and the cost of healthy food,
Yes.
why I think this is an important thing to know, that you can do this for your children and for generations, right?
And here's the other thing I love about fruit trees. In our world today, there are so many good people, and
Hmm.
there's some people who aren't so good.
Mhm.
But a fruit tree is the ultimately the most generous thing in the world because it can produce enough fruit, not just for our families, but you're going to be saying to your neighbors, hey, do you want a basket of apples? I've got so
Mm.
much. I'd love to share them with you. And when we have our fruit trees in a local park,
Mhm.
when we have our cherry harvest day, it is the most magical day of the year. We
Ah.
invite the community to come and harvest. It used to be kind of weird. People would come and grab their cherries and put them in a bag and run off. No, that's not how we do it anymore. We say it starts at 7 and ends at 8. We give people bowls, metal bowls. Everybody fill up the bowls and bring them to the harvest table and then go fill up more bowls. At 8 o'clock, we will weigh the cherries and then we divide them up equally so that
Ah.
every participant gets an equal share. I'm seeing families with small children with the kids on their shoulders helping to pick the cherries. I see people climbing the trees. I see the community working together in the way we humans were meant to work together.
Mm.
I see the sharing, the generosity, and after seeing that, I think there is no way that this planet cannot support us all. It can
Yeah, it
if
can.
we work together. It is the most magical, beautiful thing in the world. So I want more people to be able to experience that beauty.
Oh, that is lovely. That is so lovely. I grew up in Niagara, and I grew up, I don't even think they exist anymore, but we would go, people go strawberry picking. We would go pick like that was like my mom and my aunt, and we would go pick cherry picking, like pick, it was like pick your own.
Yes, you can
Um,
still do that.
can
And
you
it's a
still do
great,
that?
yes, you can, depending on where you
Okay.
picks. Yes, you
Yeah.
definitely can find them.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
great. But we don't know what they've been sprayed with. So whereas when you're growing your own, right?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
And but even so, if you don't have room, if that's what it takes to get the family out there to really connect with nature and
Mm,
understand the abundance, that's important stuff, right? That's really
mm.
important, for us to honor and respect these plants that we share the planet with.
Excellent. My last question is more about, this is the negative when people see a tree that they've inherited, is aside from the insects, is the critters. Is the
Oh,
So this client, when she said that the apples were, or the pears were not usable, my husband used them to throw at the raccoons.
oh,
So that is a bit of I don't, do you come across that as a downside? I mean, you're in Raccoon City, right? Like,
we
but
are we are
yeah.
in Raccoon City. So in our Orchard Park, which is a block and a half away from where I live, we've got is a park near a busy street. We don't have the critters that we are concerned about are park visitors who harvest the fruit before it's ripe.
Ah,
Or sometimes we've had, kind of people, selfish people who go harvest a whole tree
yeah,
and run off with the fruit. That's not very nice.
yeah.
We don't worry about critters there. In my own backyard, I have tried to plant fruit trees, but because I am so close to the ravine, like the cherry tree, every single cherry will be stripped off. I don't know if it's my neighbors. I don't think so, but I think it's either squirrels or raccoons or whatever. So I'm just like, okay, my own backyard maybe isn't the right one for fruit trees. But it depends what you grow. It depends the size of your tree.
Okay.
You can grow enough for the critters and for yourself. A semi-dwarf tree, let the critters get some of them and you get some of them. We can share.
Okay.
And that's my attitude with, growing lettuce or whatever that the bunnies get, that
Yes.
stuff.
Yep. Yep. That's very true too. So that's good. Good to know. Yeah. I think I want people to know that the negatives, like the positives outweigh the negatives, right?
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So give us the title of your three books again for me, please.
Okay, so people can find my books at orchardpeople.com. No, wait a minute. Let me just think. Well, go to orchardpeople.com/books to find the books, or
Okay.
go to Amazon. One
Okay.
book is called Fruit Tree Pruning: The Science and Art of Cultivating Healthy Fruit Trees. The other key book that I think people will be interested in is a really quick read: Grow Fruit Trees Fast.
Excellent.
That one, I would start there because everything we've talked about, Joanne, everything we've talked about is basically in that book, except Fruit Tree Pruning, which takes a whole book of its own.
Right.
I also have two more books: Growing Urban Orchards, which is a great overview. It's a goofy story of us starting our community orchard and the lessons we learned, the mistakes we made, so you don't have to make
Ah,
those
make the same
mistakes.
mistakes. Excellent.
Yeah. And then finally, for those people who are ambitious and want to learn more, I have Fruit Tree Grafting for Everyone. So if you
Ah,
already have a backyard tree and you have, let's say, an apple tree with one type of apple growing on it, and you think, I can add four more types of apple on the same tree so that my tree produces some apples that ripen in August and some in September and some in October, all on one tree. So I teach you how to graft in that book. Lots of books.
wow. That's a whole
Yeah.
other show, Susan.
That's a whole other show.
We need
That's
a
a whole
grafting.
other show. So
Yeah, we need a.
actually, the best website to go to is go to orchardpeople.com and then click on books. That's the best way to go because otherwise you might
Excellent.
get lost.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It was great to learn, and I'm excited to share some of this with the client and with future clients as well, that I have been talking to. And I love putting the trees, fruit trees, in designs for clients, especially when well, whether they have space or not. Like situating it. And I am good, and I don't like to put trees next to the fence. So I'm glad that I'm doing that thing right. So yeah, so thank you very much for joining me once again down the garden path. And thank you everyone for listening. You can check out our show on anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as my YouTube channel, and possibly even Susan's YouTube channel. So yeah, so thank you everybody for listening, and we love the feedback. So if you have questions, that I'll have all of Susan's contact information in our show notes. You can reach out or comment on the podcast, and we would love to help you. Right?
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's been totally fun.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Bye for now.